Testing. Aha, and we're live apparently. Just checking. So I just cleaned my glasses there, folks, and popped a little bit early as always to check that everything's okay, because it wasn't last week, and we had a real lot of bother getting on. For some reason, YouTube kept kicking us. But it looks like we've got green for the sound machine. Everything seems to be okay, and we have video as well. So just while we're waiting for people to join us, if you're out there, say hello. I think I'm in the room a little bit early myself at the moment. And we've got an excellent chapter tonight for our God Emperor of Dune book club. Chapter 18, which we're going to call the Chenoeh Report. Let's see. So we're just going to get organized. I had a wee mistake there, I think, in my book. Just found it there just before we came on. There's Sean Wyland saying, good evening, Doc. How you doing, Sean? Hope you can hear me okay tonight. Hopefully there's no problems getting on. Everything looks groovy so far. But yeah, I just had a right old time of it last week, so I thought I'll pop on even a little bit earlier just to make sure. But we'll say hello to everybody just there as 10 o'clock hits. How you keeping, Sean, anyway? Hope life's treating you well. There we are. That's it. Sorry about that. Just getting organized. So getting some of those precious fluids. That's better. And I've got my paperweight found for this week. We don't have a particularly long chapter this week, actually, but it's a very, very good one. There's 10 o'clock, so I'll say hello to everybody out there. Hello, my name's Doc Sloan. Thank you very much for joining me as always. This is my YouTube channel, also known as The Doghouse. It's a place for science fiction, and tonight we're going to have a bit of a continuance with our God Emperor of Dune book club, which we're going through chapter at a time. And tonight is chapter 18, which is known as the Chenoeh Report. It's a short chapter. I think it's about 4.5 pages long. Sorry, let me just adjust my light over here a wee bit. That's a bit better. Just there we go. Get my copy of the book organized. I suppose tonight marks a little bit of a journey point, if you like. And as I'm sure you all know, we're working away with these notebooks, scribbling down things as we go, seeing what we find, etc., etc. Tonight we will hit, with the end of chapter 18, we have hit the end of this book with just some notes on Gnosticism, concepts of the monad and the demiurge, and the ideas of Abraxas and Yaldabaoth that we're going to have a bit of a chat about tonight, because we promised we would, just to explain one of the aspects of the God Emperor's character. That's a kind of, yeah. So just to let you know, we've started up, haven't got the full, I've got God E of Dune on the front at the moment, as I scribble that on with Tipex, and we've already started, pardon me, we've got another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages of notes in on this stuff to have a little bit of a chat about with you tonight about it. So hopefully we can give you the ideas to kind of present a little bit about what these, specifically what the idea of Abraxas is and its connection to Frank Herbert, its connection to the God Emperor of Dune. We'll see that connection run from Carl Jung back down through the centuries, down through the millennia, all the way back to the likes of Plato. But we'll not hopefully do your heads in with it too much. We can kind of, I think we've got a bit of a chronology and a timeline, and a sort of a good enough layman's explanation for what a lot of this stuff is, and how it, I suppose, ends up in the vocabulary of Frank Herbert. So we'll be starting our, let me see, what will it be? This is 8, 9, 10. This was the completion of our 11th notebook, as we've been going, and we're on to notebook number 12. So sense of achievement, we should probably hit another 4 notebooks with this book. Oh, sorry, a total of 4. It seems to be about right for all the larger sized books in the Dune series. We only used up about 1.5 for Dune Messiah, I suppose, but it is the shortest of the Dune novels. So we've got that to look forward to tonight. We'll run through that. As I said, it's a short chapter, so we'll run through that afterwards. And I suppose we were talking about the timing of having a matter about Abraxas and what it is. is correct, especially in light of the last chapter, and especially in light of what's going to happen or has happened in this chapter, which is really good. It's possible there may be a bit of a connection to something else from Greek mythology and drama tonight, though I'm not sure if it's just because I've been looking at it. Oddly enough, that something popped into my head tonight, just in relation to a particular myth, that of Ion. I think the other week we were chatting. I was saying I've been wanting to have a look at Euripides as the Bacchae. Pardon me. And oddly enough, I think I'd said that this edition that I have contains Ion, the women of Troy, Helen, and the Bacchae. So oddly enough, in terms of, I was looking at this book and talking about it the other week in relation to some aspects of the fish speakers, and lining that up with the Bacchae, I feel like, especially with the festival setting, we can maybe look at the god emperors a little bit like Dionysus in some ways. But yeah, but I don't know. It's maybe me reading too much into it. But the interesting thing is, I came to this without actually having to look at the play. Wasn't looking at the play Ion at all in relation to what I was looking at in this book. So we'll maybe have a wee bit of a natter about that just to see. And apart from that, folks, what we've got is one of I think my favorite chapters of anything within Frank Herbert's Dune series. I think it's a short, very well written chapter that works on a lot of different levels, and in itself is very meta, I think. I could almost argue that the author's showing off a bit here. I'm quite impressed by this chapter. There's people having arrived. I shall say hello to you all as everything's scrolling down here. So obviously we had Sean in first saying good evening, Doc. And there's at Flaccid House saying evening all, evening Doc. And Carlos Crescelia saying, hey Doc, how's it hanging? Greetings Flaccid House, greetings Carlos. There's Captain Badminton 2391 saying good evening chaps, greetings and salutations Captain. And there's Babs Bilo saying evening Doc, howdy you all. And Baked Alaska Joe saying howdy all, howdy folks, howdy Babs, howdy Joe. Hope you are keeping well. And there's that Sootpot saying evening you all, greetings Sootpot. Had a good wee chat with Sootpot last night on the Zoom room. Just say, all the best, Sootpot. Keep getting better. Carlos said, hey, Babs. Captain Badminton says the Emperor protects. Oh, wait, wrong franchise. And there's Cynthia saying, hi, Doc, and hi, all. Hi, Cynthia. How you doing? And Babs is saying, hey, Carlos. Greetings to you all. Greetings and salutations, fellow cosmopolitans. Sci-fi fans. Yeah, it's a great chapter tonight, folks. Absolutely love it. We could call it all sorts of things, but of course it does have a title, it does have a name. What we're going to be looking at is the first-hand account of the Chenoeh Report. I've given this chapter a couple of titles actually. We can call it the Words of Holy Sister Quintinius Violet Chenoeh. The Chenoeh Report's a good name for it, but I've also called it the Tyrant, the Truth, the Words, and the Myth. I think that particularly in relation to words, that I think very much this is what the chapter is about. In relation to the God Emperor's behavior in the previous chapter, which really was what got us going into, whoa, hang on a minute, this isn't the behavior of a good guy, is it at all? We talked about the hypocrisy of the God Emperor ordering people killed because of a particular myth. We get the difference between him when he burns the historians compared to, for example, the difference between Torquemada when he burns people for heresy. So it was very much an interesting look at him in the previous chapter. And as I said, we're starting to get this dualistic sense of what the God Emperor is, especially in relation to him as being a deity. And our little epigraph that starts off, I suppose, gives us a little bit of a kick into that world. It's just one of these little poems here. It's over here sand blows, over there sand blows, over there a rich man waits, over here I wait. And this is the voice of Shai Hulud from the oral history. At this point, as we've been going along with things, we pretty much we pretty much know that the person behind the oral history is Leto II. So indeed the voice of Shai-Hulud. And I was just wondering in relation to the duality of the God Emperor. I have scribbled underneath this, Leto is Shai-Hulud, the worm is Shaitan, and then I've created an inverse for it where I have Leto as Shaitan and the worm is Shai-Hulud. And that's going to have a little bit to do with our look at Abraxas and Yalb Deoth later on, folks. So we get a shift here. It's from the oral history. It's not from the secret journals of Leto, as Leto II, as most of the things have been. Sorry, the stolen journals up until now. And what we're going to get is, as I suppose, something that's very meta within this chapter, is we're going to get Sister Chenoeh's account of one of her discussions with the God Emperor. And we've met Sister Chenoeh before, way back in chapter 11. Pardon me. When we look at, I suppose, we also get a kind of thing from the oral history there, Lord Leto to the penitent from the oral history. But essentially what we call the Welbeck abridgment. And we have, I suppose, sisters, as at this point, this is one of the peregrinations where Sister Chenoeh and another sister of the Bene Gesserit are sort of trotting along. This is where we find out about the 9 historians and so on, trotting along with Leto on one of his peregrinations. And we get a right old little conversation between the God Emperor and Sister Chenoeh at this point. So, pardon me, just in relation to this, we have a couple of nods back to that chapter. We have the Reverend Mother Cyaxares mentioned here. And she would have been one of the Bene Gesserit authors or editors of the Welbeck abridgment, or that report that's within the Bene Gesserit household. So we've got all sorts of little things here, and it's mainly going to be told in the first person, because this is, we're going to get a shift in the narrative style here, because this is actually meant to be Sister Chenoeh's report as she recorded it in her magnificent memory? Is that how the God Emperor puts it? Yeah. So we actually do have a few interesting questions to ask about this at the end of the chapter. I suppose we'll point them out. But one of them, and I think right off from the bat, before we go anywhere, is we'll get the nature of this account and how it's presented and how it's moved out of the God Emperor's hands, if you like. But the question that's going to be is, how honest is the reportage of Sister Chenoeh? And it really wasn't until I'd kind of read all the way through this chapter and started to absorb it and think about it, where it made me consider that not all of it was necessarily accurate or not embellished, if you like. And I wonder what you think about it. Or it is actually what it is. It could actually be a genuine account of what happened between Sister Chenoeh and the God Emperor. Pardon me. So little references to check back on into chapter 11, if you like. And here we go, folks. So within italics at the top, after our epigraph, we are told that this is Sister Chenoeh's account found among her papers after her death. So right away we get this, what we're used to with Frank, working with the back and forward in time, foreshadowing, prophecy, letting us know things, etc., etc. And immediately that's going to give us a bit of a slant on what we see within this. We also know this is a historical document, if you like. It's going to be in relation to what, as we go and as we read it, we're learning about it from the point of it being, I suppose, read in the far future or listened to. So within the first, written in the first person, and we get one of these repeating motifs that we have within Frank Herbert's Dune series. First of all, within the first sentence, I obey both my tenets as a Bene Gesserit and the commands of the God Emperor by withholding these words from my report while secreting them, that they may be found when I am gone. For the Lord Leto said to me, you will return to your superiors with my message, but these words keep secret for now. I will visit my rage upon your sisterhood if you fail. So essentially a threat there, that an incentive, if you like, to keep these words secret from the God Emperor. And we get the sense, of course, that, pardon me, from what we've already been told, Sister Chenoeh's account found among her papers after her death, already we're getting this self-referential meta thing going within this chapter, and that she does indeed keep her word. The thing that we get, the repeating motif is, of course, I suppose that Sister Chenoeh serves two masters here. But like late kinds, it's a thing we get, isn't it? A bit like Duncan Idaho serving the Fremen and the Atreides. Paul serving the Fremen and the Atreides in the Empire, etc. Two masters. So under pain of death, basically, I will visit, well, not death, but I will visit upon pain of rage being visited upon the sisterhood. So, as again, continuing in the first person here, as the Reverend Mother Ch18 warned me before I left, you must do nothing which will bring down his wrath upon us. And again, my wee note here, I've said already, see chapter 11, one of the Bene Gesserit authors or editors of the Welbeck abridgment. Pardon me, you'll find her, I suppose, a couple of mentions here, but at the very end of that chapter. It sort of lets us know what we've been reading, if you like. All right, that's chapter 12. Yeah, our embassy to the Lord Leto's decennial festival will make a full report of this to him. Respectfully submitted, the Reverend Mothers Ch18, Yeto, Mamalut, Eknakosk, and Achille. So there are five Reverend Mothers in that committee, if you like. Pardon me. That was an interesting chapter, actually. So a warning: don't do nothing to provoke him. Basically, do nothing which will bring down his wrath upon us. So, an order from the Reverend Mothers to to do what he says, basically not to provoke him. She's been ordered by the God Emperor to keep his secret. Even though she's meant to be reporting to the Reverend Mothers, she finds a way to do this. Now, so yes, indeed, two warnings really. Keep this secret for now, or else I'll visit my rage and do nothing which will bring down his wrath upon us. While I ran beside the Lord Leto on that short peregrination of which I have spoken, I thought to ask him about his likeness to a Reverend Mother. I said, sorry, I'm thinking of wee things to scribble in here that I should have thought of earlier. Pardon me, Lord, I know how it is that a Reverend Mother acquires the memories of her ancestors and of others. How was it with you? And so here he is, he's being quite chirpy with Chenoeh. It was a design of our genetic history and the working of the spice. My twin sister Ganima and I were awakened in the womb, aroused before birth into the presence of our ancestral memories. So this is the status known as preborn. Chenoeh says, Lord, my sisterhood calls that abomination. First thing I've written next, that's just as a character trait next to here for Chenoeh, is she's brave. And rightly so, the Lord Leto said. The ancestral numbers can be overwhelming, and who knows before the event which force will command such a horde, good or evil. And there we have that dualistic view here, I suppose. It's going to be one or the other, isn't it? It's not someone, maybe a well-balanced individual. Pardon me. Lord, how did you overcome such a force? I did not overcome it, the Lord Leto said, but the persistence of the pharaonic model served both Gani and me. Do you know that model, Sister Chenoeh? We of the sisterhood are well coached in history, Lord. Yes, but you do not think of this as I do, the Lord Leto said. I speak of the disease of government, which was caught by the Greeks, who spread it to the Romans, who distributed it so far and wide that it never has completely died out. There's a fair bit there. So the likeness to a Reverend Mother, that's the Reverend Mothers have other memory in that sense. And I suppose Leto's a wee bit chirpy cheeky with her here, isn't it? It was a design of our genetic history and the working of the spice. And our genetic history in that case is the Bene Gesserit breeding program. That's the design, isn't it? Which I've got a very curious question to ask about this at the end of the chapter, I suppose. And it's to do with this sister Chenoeh, and also to do with design, I suppose. Let me just scribble something in here when I remember again. Oh, this chapter's got me thinking a lot. It's still got me thinking. That's why I've got plenty of wee things in here, but it's why I'm still doing a bit of scribbling. So how did you get your ancestral memories? By design. In other words, that's what you intended in the Bene Gesserit breeding program, and the design of the genetic history, and the workings of the spice of the drug. This is what awakened these in the womb before birth. So just, again, just like Alia as well, awakened to these ancestral memories in the womb. Pardon me. And of course, the Bene Gesserit call this abomination. And we know from reading Children of Dune that Leto never really escaped it. What he's saying here about the pharaonic model saving both Gani and me, it's not quite the same, not quite true, is it? The word both there, Gani had her own way, basically, pretty much of walling off the other memory, didn't she? It was a slightly different solution. Which I think, remember, if we talked about it at the time, we sort of said it was kind of what made Alia's eventual fall, but kind of particularly tragic that they were unable or unwilling to save her. But it wasn't that there was one way of saving her, there was more than one. There was at least two. So that's a little bit of the persistence of the pharaonic model saved both Gani and me. Possibly to do with the genes, the persistence of that model within the Bene Gesserit program, in terms of overcoming such a force. This is back to harem, by the way, things like that we never quite figured them out yet, did we? Though I've kind of always said that harem is Cheops. Though we have a few other candidates. Pardon me. Goodness. We've got plenty of comments here. Captain Badminton said, "Man, I wish I could stay. Unfortunately, have an early shift tomorrow. Wishing you all well. Have a nice bank holiday weekend." No worries, Captain Badminton. You're quite possibly away by now. Sorry, I didn't catch your comment earlier. Have a good bank holiday. TC Cap says, "Soup pot." Carlos said, "Wonder if Leo ever considered having golas of himself and Hui made so that he could have his happy ending, and if a gola of Leto would even have the God Emperor's memory." That's an interesting one. I suppose he would have the knowledge of that's the trap that the Thylaxu created for Paul, doesn't it? That he can always have them back. I don't know. And the interesting thing, I suppose, is that Ganima shouldn't be in his other memory, should she? Supot saying, "I don't think a gola of Leto in worm form would be possible." It'd be tricky. That's what they say. Carling, interesting question, though. I wonder if Leto would have wanted to give the Tylex that much power and control. Look at how careful Leto and Mineo are regarding any tampering of the Duncan. Oh, goodness, ladies. Is that an admission? Abomination is unavoidable. I think it was, to be honest with you, Sit Point. It was one of his deceits from Children of Dune. Holly, love. If you see, I mean, the idea was that how did he beat Abomination? And he'd been lying about it the whole time. It was one of his great lies, if you like, his great deceits. He didn't beat it. He kind of went with it. if you see what I mean. And you generally get the idea that when it's explained, I think later on, that the thing that you shouldn't do was try to suppress it, try to fight it that way, because that's what Alia had done, which led to her ultimately going mad. Ganima was able to kind of, with the help of her mother, with the help of Chani, another memory, I suppose, had a friendly individual, as it's mentioned here, who would command such a horde. And between them, I think, the way, if I remember correctly, they were able to simply wall off all the rest of the personalities and other memory. Just keep, that's it, and pay no attention. So I'm pretty sure that's how she dealt with it. Leto kind of, I suppose it is something similar. We kind of look at the male-female way of looking at it, used a personality which was harem, and it was used it to keep the rest of them in check. But ultimately, what the abomination is, I think, in that sense, is where the sheer force of all those other personalities swarm and take over the original individual, if you like, But we even got into the difficulties of it, because if we started thinking about it within Children of Dune, we had the potential for like at least possibly three different Baron Harkonnens about within other memory, not including, really not thinking about the original Baron at all. How many versions of people are existing within different people's memories and stuff. It started to get complicated, didn't it? So is abomination unavoidable? It depends on what we think of it, what it means. But I think abomination is avoidable. In that sense, I kind of shift the goalposts of it, where it's not quite where you have all of these other people in other memory, because that's what the Bene Gesserit are. It's where they take control of the individual. That's abomination, and I think it's just they don't like it in children, etc., because it's so easy, for a force of adult personalities to take over the mind of a child, that kind of thing. Cynthia said, Carlos was saying, Cynthia, valid point. Yeah, to give the Thylax the ability to, make golas of an individual such as the God Emperor, I would say he controls his DNA jealously. Carlos saying, plus, would a gola of Leto even be a gola, or would it be a clone? The other thing, I think, that even if you're thinking about that, both Carlos and Cynthia is I think Sootpot pointed this out originally, is that the God Emperor has a machine component to him now. A bit like Nayla, there's a new part of the synthesis, if you like. He's not just man and worm, he's part machine as well. He's a cyborg. And I don't think they could replicate that, could they? Interesting questions. Let's see, where do we get to, folks? Loads in this chapter. Yes, she was being brave. Lord, my sisterhood calls that abomination. And rightly so, the Lord Leto said, the ancestral numbers can be overwhelming, and who knows before the event which force will command such a horde, good or evil. Lord, how did you overcome such a force? I did not overcome it, the Lord Leto said, but the persistence of the pharaonic model saved both Gani and me. Do you know that model, Sister Chenoeh? We of the sisterhood are well coached in history, Lord. I'll put next to that, unlike Mineo, and is the history that the question I'm asking, is the history that the sisterhood are coached in the same as Leto's history? And I don't think it is. Leto's reply here is, yes, but you do not think of this as I do, the Lord Leto said. I speak of the disease of government which was caught by the Greeks, who spread it to the Romans, who distributed it so far out and wide that it never has completely died out. It's an odd comment, that, I suppose, the disease of government that was caught by the Greeks. Well, pardon me, like many cultures prior to them becoming democratic or Islamic, they were a collection of kings and little kingdoms and city-states, I suppose, that eventually emerged. But the Greeks had their problems with kings, and they had their problems with oligarchs. And of course, their little lived democracy became an empire, which lived for a very, very short period of time as well, which a lot of people forget about actually when they think about the Greeks, the Hellenic peoples, is that as much all the democracy thing, it fell and became an empire, if you like that idea. Um, and although we're talking about the main political unit at the time would be the city-state with the Romans, I suppose, again, kings to republic, and then that republic fell and became an empire. So the democratic elements of these ancient cultures always failed, and ended up in imperial civilizations, if you like. Some last longer than others, and the Romans who spread it, yes, I suppose. The Pax Romana, the Greek language, all of that kind of thing, a particular type of government. There's governments aplenty in the ancient world, long before the Greeks and Romans, if you see what I mean. You can look at, I suppose the pharaonic model. You've got the Egyptians, the Sumerians, the Mesopotamians, the Chinese, etc., etc. I suppose many of which develop. I suppose one from the creation of walls and the idea of mutual defense, but ultimately with the written word, which we're going to have a good look at in this chapter. So, does my Lord speak riddles? I got again the slightest association with Leto with the Sphinx, especially with that Oedipus kind of inversion kind of thing we looked at before. Kind of thing, yeah. We talked about it before. Let's see. No riddles. I hate this thing, but it's saved us. Gani and I formed powerful internal alliances with ancestors who followed the pharaonic model. They helped us form a mingled identity within that long dormant mob. So this is basically, I suppose, we're getting certainly Leto's way of surviving abomination, if you like. Form powerful internal alliances, follow the pharaonic model. The pharaonic model is one of kingship, I suppose. Kings and god kings, if you like. They helped us form a mingled identity within that mob, long dormant mob. And again, Leto sort of chats to the mob, doesn't he? It makes me wonder how much the internal memory, the race memory, if you like, the mob, I wonder how much they're governed by emotion. That's what I got thinking about there. So a very loose kind of explanation for the problems of government and blaming it on the Romans and the Greeks here, but which I find fun. So no riddles. This is how we did it. Not using twisted language. That's how I find this disturbing, Lord, and well, you should. Why are you telling me this now, Lord? You have never answered one of us before in this manner, not that I know of. Because you listen well, Sister Chenoeh, because you will obey me, and because I will never see you again. The Lord Leto spoke those strange words to me, and then he asked, why have you not inquired about what your sisterhood calls my insane tyranny? So this is bound to be a bit scary to Chenoeh here, isn't it? It's a pejorative, isn't it? It's what not a nice thing to say about his state of mind or his rule, if you like, from the sisterhood. And it's certainly something he's aware of, and it's certainly something that could cause him to be murderous, I think, in some ways. We get a little bit of foreshadowing and wonder here with this, because we're never going to see, you'll never see Chenoeh again. And again, we already we get a sense of her death. It's a little bit what's coming here. The Oracle is at work, I think, in this chapter. We're getting glimpses of a future at the end of someone's life, if you like, and we're also getting glimpses of how that is going to be represented as history in the far future. Starts playing with your head a wee bit when you think about it. So yeah, it's an opportunity for the sisterhood to kind of find stuff out. They're going to find it out. but the conditions of the Lord Leto are that they're not going to be able to use it till later. And I think in this sense we can see that Leto is possibly, so maybe not altogether malevolent towards the Bene Gesserit, but actually possibly benevolent towards them in this, setting up their future a bit. So why have you not inquired about what your sisterhood calls my insane tyranny? And you know, rather than being scared, so the major character trait I think of this, of Sister Chenoeh in this, is her bravery. And I really like her as a character in this, and again, her the way things are being told here. Emboldened by his manner, I ventured to say, Lord, we know about some of your bloody executions. They trouble us. The Lord Leto then did a strange thing. He closed his eyes as we went, and he said, now, we've got a lot coming here. So just, I suppose it's almost a test of her bravery by asking her something this kind of that should be scary for her to admit. She uses it. She decides to be brave and say, "Yeah, we know about what we call your bloody executions. That's, you're scared. You know, they trouble us. You're scary." This kind of thing. So again, just her bravery is on display here. I've written next this, where the Lord Leto then did a strange thing. He closed his eyes as we went, and he said this, you know, and it made me think. And again, I suppose it'll be whenever we get to the end of this chapter how we consider what's happening here, what's being said, what's being done. I've written here: is he getting into the role here? Is he getting into character? Is he about to begin a performance? Is this propaganda? And is this part of Leto's myth making? Is this what we're about to hear and see him say and do? Is this part of his golden path? And is this part of his myth making process? All of this, everything in this chapter. So this, and he speaks. Because I know you have been trained to record accurately whatever words you hear, I will speak to you now, Sister Chenoeh, as though you were a page in one of my journals. Preserve these words well, for I do not want them lost. And we're going to talk about things being meta in this chapter. Meta being kind of self-referential, if you like, beyond something in a way, but a part of it. She is going to become a page, I suppose, in his story, in his myth, if not one of the journals. I'd imagine that this is actually a truth here. And truths are going to be important in this chapter. Because again, we can assume that whatever's being thought here, as much as there's a record going to Chenoeh, it's probably being recorded by the Lord Leto's telepathic machines, if you like, his Ch18 recorders. So she is indeed going to be like a page in one of his journals. Oddly enough, she's a page in one of mine too. So it's all going to get very meta, this. So you've been trained to record accurately whatever words you hear. I will speak to you now, Sister Chenoeh, as though you were a page in one of my journals. Preserve these words well, for I do not want them lost. I assure my sisterhood now that what follows exactly as he spoke them are the words uttered by the Lord Leto. And I suppose that the words that there are 4 words we really need to pay attention to in this chapter. One of those words is the word or words. So just in how it's being used here at the moment, we're going to see this. The other 4: tyrant, truth, and myth. So here we go. As this is from the assured words of Sister Chenoeh, what the Lord Leto says. To my certain knowledge, when I am no longer consciously present here among you, when I am here only as a fearsome creature of the desert, many people will look back upon me as a tyrant. Fair enough, I have been tyrannical. A tyrant not fully human, not insane, merely a tyrant. But even ordinary tyrants have motives and feelings beyond those usually assigned them by facile historians, and they will think of me as a great tyrant. Thus, my feelings and motives are a legacy I would preserve, but lest history distort them too much. I'll read that again. Thus, my feelings and motives are a legacy I would preserve, lest history distort them too much. History has a way of magnifying some characteristics while it discards others. People will try to understand me and to frame me in their words. They will seek truth, but the truth always carries the ambiguity. I'm sorry, the ambiguity of the words used to express it. Apologies there. You will not understand me. The harder you try, the more remote I will become until finally I vanish into eternal myth, a living God at last. Should have a spate of booming guffaws there. Now, there's plenty there, but before we push on, first of all, depending on how we look at it, if we look at Alia as being an emperor or an empress, then he is a tyrant. But in fact, he was the rightful emperor. And in terms of what a tyrant is an usurper, very specifically. But I think this is very much in the more modern sense of the word, a tyrant being just a leader who's a real asshole, basically. Pardon me. But Oedipus Tyrannus, for example, Oedipus is a tyrant because he kills the previous king, Laius, who the Baron's based upon. So that's why we associate the word, for example, with Oedipus, as he doesn't become king through the process of inheritance, if you like. Who else is a tyrant? There's a good tyrant in the Bible. Is Omri, I think, is a tyrant. In the sense that he's an usurper. If I'm remembering him correctly, he's the father of Ahab, I believe. So Ahab would be a king, where his father is a tyrant. So what we've got here is a little bit more of apologia, I suppose. Some may call me a tyrant. Yes, okay, fair enough. I am a tyrant, you can run this with some of the analogies that Frank has used within the Dune series, but like Hitler and so on. But Hitler going, yeah, some have called me a tyrant. Yeah. Mussolini, yeah, I'm a tyrant. Stalin, yeah. Hands up, I'm one. Yes, indeed. So it's I think it's funny. But even ordinary tyrants have motives and feelings. I think this is quite funny in a way, but it's feelings. Feelings. Beyond those usually assigned to them by facile historians. So even tyrants get the blues, this kind of thing. You just don't understand me. We get a lot of this from the God Emperor. We also get a bit of it from Paul, by the way. Often about concern about how others will perceive him rather than what he actually is. His feelings beyond those usually, and there we get this hatred of historians, I think, because historians will ultimately, as much as the God Emperor is writing histories himself, other people will write them after him, and there'll be nothing he can do to stop them. In that sense, and I think this is where we get the possible hatred of the historians and their process, the facile historians. And they will think of me as a great tyrant. That's not how what a caring individual I was, or how much I like my pet dog, this kind of thing. My feelings and motives are a legacy, so I would preserve lest history distort them too much. So he wants to make sure that people know what he's like, that he had feelings and that he wasn't a complete tyrant. He did a lot of good work for charity. I kind of get this sense from him here. It is about the distortion of words, of language, of truth, of history being an inquiry into something that can reveal many, many different answers, depending on how you go about your business and what evidence you use and find. So this chapter being a wee bit meta, I think it's very meta. Just to show you something, by the way. Did I do? Where did I? Oh, I've coloured it in that you can't actually see the words. Hang on, that's not good. I'm gonna make that a bit darker. Meta, self-referential, after, beyond, along with. There we go. It's all about meta. And it really is. People will try to understand me and frame me in their words. They will seek truth, but the truth always carries the ambiguity of the words used to express it. This is true. What we're doing is trying to understand Frank and his Dune series and to frame it in words, I suppose, especially analyzing his words, to seek a kind of truth, aren't we? And this truth always carries the ambiguity of the words used to express it. How Frank puts it, his turn of phrase, how he uses syntax and grammar within these books, all of it, the choice of words, the choice of names, the etymological work that he must have done, all of it presents a certain picture to us. And the more we pay attention to the words, I suppose is one of the things that partly it motivates me here is to get a sense of some kind of truth from the author of these books and what it is that they're, what's the message? What are they really about? What do I get from it myself? And we're told you will not understand me. The harder you try, the more remote I will become until finally I vanish into the eternal myth, a living God at last. So ultimately, the more you seek to look at something, the more I suppose distant you'll become from it. The more it'll become just a story ultimately that you'll put together with certain words, and the more of these stories we have, the more they will contribute to something becoming a myth, becoming truly mythical, as opposed to being just like a set of normal stories that you might buy in the shop or something. This is actually pretty bang on. It's in many ways, if you the one to look at, I suppose, is the King Arthur stories, which are still being rewritten and tidied and changed and altered. And I'm sure he's been set in the far future now. Oh, there's a King Arthur story on Babylon 5, isn't there? But so many authors getting their hold on ultimately what is a core story. The origin myth, I think, is always the interesting thing. What's the first version of that story? And that's a good sort of historical inquiry to make into mythology. Is the origin story? What really happened? What's it really about? How has it been distorted and changed down throughout time by different authors who've brought their own morals, their own culture, their own language, their own dreams to these kind of things, their own approaches, and we, the King Arthur myth as to what its origin is, it's probably unrecognizable. We're going to see a little bit of some stuff to do with Christianity and Judaism and Gnosticism at the end of this chapter tonight. And you'll see how this can happen. Almost in the same way to religions. One will change something out a little bit, take something, pinch, and especially in terms of Gnosticism. I think it's going to be fun to look at. Dear. And ultimately, I suppose the more we inquire into the story, the more we're separated from it in time. The less we can get to the core, the origin. Ultimately, that these creatures become mythical, the characters in them, they become like gods, this kind of thing. I think this is what he's saying here. It's some great stuff coming out in this chapter. We've used the word tyranny here, really, and we have a sense for the truth and the use of words. Whether we can seek truth through words and language or alter it to change it to make it more interesting. Let me just catch up with your comments here, folks. Let's see. So they say, what aspect of the pharaonic model is Leto talking about here? Just religious power, something else? Um, but it's I suppose it's kingship, but I think it's the idea of being a god king. Um, I think we do have a quote about it from the God Emperor later on. I'm not 100% sure. Actually, it might be from Children of Dune. And I don't know. I'm not too sure about what Frank means by it. I think he seems to take the idea that civilization building, the kind of kingship that's required, is the pharaonic model based on the pharaohs of Egypt, um, and the idea that they're god kings, this kind of thing, inbred, these inbred dynasties, the certain type of people um, that Leto intended to create. I think in Children of Dune, I think this speech must come from, by the way, it must be from the end of it, was the sort of people that would willingly follow such a person, such a god. Which is what we have pretty much in his universe for the last 3,500 years. So that speech is the key to that, Cynthia. I think it must be at the back of Children of Dune. Bear with me a wee second. 1, 2, 3. You must be 4. There you go. There's a couple of conclusions in, I suppose, but it's the one with Farad'n, isn't it, where he's chatting to him? Bear with me a wee second, see if I can find it. I got Janice. Let's see. Exit. That's him. Yeah, I've got all my scribbles here about Cheops and Karam and Harum and trying to figure all that out. Let me see. I think this is it. Because he goes on about also marrying his sister but not breeding with her, that kind of thing. Talking about Harum being cruel and autocratic. From, let's see. I think this is it here. Different types of mistakes. Let's see. Doing this, I voted. Oh yeah. Let's see. We had well and good cousins. She asked me if I were abomination. I answered in the negative. This was my first treachery. That's what we were talking about earlier. You see, Ganima escaped this, but I did not. I was forced to balance the inner lives under the pressure of excessive melange. I had to seek the active cooperation of those aroused lives within me. Doing this, I avoided the most malignant and chose a dominant helper thrust upon me by the inner awareness, which was my father. I am not, in truth, my father or this helper. Then again, I am not the second Leto, and Farad'n says, explain. You have an admirable directness, Leto said. I am a community dominated by one who is ancient and surpassingly powerful. He fathered a dynasty which endured for 3,000 of our years. His name was Harum, and until this line trailed out in the congenital weaknesses and superstitions of a descendant, his subjects lived in a rhythmic sublimity. They moved unconsciously with the changes of the seasons. They bred individuals who tended to be short-lived, superstitious, and easily led by a god king. Taken as a whole, they were a powerful people. Their survival as a species became habit. I don't like the sound of that, is what Farad'n says. Nor do I, really, Leto said. But it's the universe I'll create. And why? It's a lesson I learned on Dune. We kept the presence of death a dominant spectre among the living here. By that presence, the dead change the living. The people of such a society sink down into their bellies, but when the time comes for the opposite, when they arise, they are great and beautiful. So that's the plan from that's that speech anyway. About we get that bit about abomination as well, but that's the pharaonic model, if you like, to create god kings, to breed people that are easily kept under the thumb and that would worship such an individual, and they're easily put to work, if you I get that sense. Sootpot says she knows of the journals before Leto mentions them. Laughing, I was going to question his use of Tyrant. I was thinking perhaps he's no longer purely Leto. Yeah, he's split personality at the very least. Um, he's Leto and the Worm, and who knows what the machine in his head's doing as well. He's evolving, as he's changing as well. Again, at this point, isn't he? That's it, you see. I am not a leader, nor even a guide, a god. Remember that. I am quite different from leaders and guides. Gods, he'd take no responsibility for anything except Genesis. Gods accept everything and thus accept nothing. Gods must be identifiable yet remain anonymous. No. Gods do not need a spirit world. My spirits dwell within me. Answerable to my slightest summons, I share with you because it pleases me to do so. I share with you because it pleases me to do so what I have learned about them and through them. They are my truth. Personal pronoun now. Gods must be identifiable yet remain anonymous. Not necessarily so. I thought that all of these statements are kind of paradoxical and dualistic, if you like. Gods don't need a spirit world. My spirits dwell within me. That's an Abraxas thing. 365 of them, isn't there? Right, so just scribble that down. I suppose, again, referring to the lives of other memory. So beware of the truth, gentle sister. Although much sought after, truth can be dangerous to the seeker. Myths and reassuring lies are much easier to find and believe. If you find a truth, even a temporary one, it can demand that you make painful changes. Conceal your truths within words. Natural ambiguity will protect you then. Words are much easier to absorb than are the sharp Delphic stabs of wordless potent. I'll say that again. Are the sharp Delphic stabs of wordless portent. With words, you can cry out in the chorus, why didn't somebody warn me? Sorry, that's why didn't someone warn me? But I did warn you. I warned you by example, not with words. So the God Emperor's words, I suppose, that create his truth, in the sense that what is a God there? I suppose no responsibility for anything except Genesis, except for creation. Gods accept everything and thus accept nothing. Must be identifiable yet anonymous. Opposites here, aren't they? Dichotomies, paradoxical statements. Gods do not need a spirit world. My spirits dwell within me. Again, that's a sort of a term to do with Abraxas. We'll have a wee natter about it at the end of the chapter. I share this with you because it's my pleasure to do so. What I have learned about them and through them. Spirits and the spirits within them, if you like. They are my truth. Because of the truth, gentle sister, although much sought after, truth can be dangerous to the seeker. Myths and reassuring lies. And it's interesting that they're separated there, and I like that. White lies, if you like, I suppose, reassuring lies, are much easier to find and believe. If you find a truth, even a temporary one, it can demand that you make painful changes. Conceal your truths within words. Natural ambiguity will protect you will protect you then. Apologies. Words are much easier to absorb than the sharp Delphic stabs of wordless portent. With words you can cry out in the chorus, why didn't someone warn me? But I did warn you. I warned you by example, not with words. So this is the God Emperor, I suppose. In part, his raison d'etre, one of the things, is he is the warning. And we've talked about this, He is the warning, and we get to see what the warning is. He's not explaining it to us. He's not explaining it to his population. He's demonstrating it to them with real action. And the words that we use to, I suppose, to reassure us, to create stories that make it okay, or to create our new legends, the things that help us kind of deal with it, if you like. The things that can protect us from the realities of life can be such stories, such myths. The Delphic stabs of wordless portent. Words are easier to deal with than that. And that's interesting. I suppose it's just the prophetic things that you see coming, isn't it, that actually happen. We're going to have a little bit of a chat about Ion, I suppose, in relation to this chapter, and words and secrets and the gods disappearing and stuff like this. I think it's very interesting. Leto is the warning. It's not his words that are the warning. That not these words from the secret journals, not these words from, what are they called? The hidden journals, stolen journals. Sorry, stolen journals and secret journals. Not even things like this. It's the actions. It's his actions that he's undertaken, both on Arrakis, to the worms, to himself, to mankind, to humanity. Everything that he's done is the warning. Everything that he's done is the lesson. His words are going to be. I get the more sense about his feelings. His feelings, his motives. That's his legacy here that we're talking about. But I did warn you. I warned you by example, not with words. There are inevitably more than enough words. You record them in your marvelous memory, even now. And someday, my journals will be discovered. More words. I warn you that you read my words at your own peril. The wordless movement of terrible events lies just below their surface. Be deaf. You do not need to hear, or hearing, you do not need to remember. How soothing it is to forget, and how dangerous. Words such as mine have long been recognized for their mysterious power. There is a secret knowledge here which can be used to rule the forgetful. My truths are the substance of myths and lies I'll read that again. My truths are the substance of myths and lies which tyrants have always counted on to maneuver the masses for selfish design. You see, I share it all with you, even the great mystery of all time, the mystery by which I compose my life. I reveal it to you in words. The only past which endures lies wordlessly within you. The God Emperor fell silent then. I dared to ask, are those all of the words that my Lord wishes me to preserve? Those are the words. The God Emperor said, and I thought he sounded tired, discouraged. He had the sound of someone uttering a last testament. I recall that he had said he would never see me again, and I was fearful. But I praise my teachers because the fear did not emerge in my voice. What it flues. Lord Leto, I said, these journals of which you speak, for whom are they written? Sorry, folks. Pardon me. You'll have to excuse me. I need to blow my nose really badly, and I've got nothing to do it with in here. So give us a wee second, and I'll be right back. There we go. That's better. Sorry about that, folks. Pardon me. Weather's been really weird here the last few days. It was every kind of rain imaginable yesterday. And it started in the morning with this most unbelievable fine mist just sort of floating in the air outside. And I just that's about as light a rain as you can get here. And by the end of the day, we had full on rain that was one degree short of being hailstones, and everything, every kind of rain in between. Oh, it was bizarre. Let's see. So, words, truth, myths, the fear of what facile historians might do, how words change things. You know, how we can use stories to protect us. We've got a lot going on here. Cynthia is saying, paradox here. If gods are not responsible for anything except Genesis, how can their actions carry intentional meaning? Pardon me. So gods take responsibility for their own actions that convey truth. It's a generalization. Not every set of gods creates the universe, if you like. So not every. I suppose that accounts for why we have theogonies as well as cosmologies, if you like, or cosmogonies. Sorry. So, for example, the Greek gods do not create the universe. In fact, they're just another race of beings that is here to supplant the previous deities, if you like, which are the Titans. You know, it depends on your belief system. So we're getting some quite broad generalizations, I think, in relation to that. But yeah, I wouldn't agree with the statement that he makes about them. I suppose it's just trying to give you a sense of, from his point of view, no responsibility for anything except Genesis. Not necessarily. And we're going to have a look at Abraxas in a bit, which kind of removes the genesis of creation from the supreme being, if you like. So so gods accept everything and thus accept nothing. Yeah, paradoxical statements. Everything and nothing must be identifiable yet remain anonymous. Not really. You know, gods have attributes, I suppose, but even with the barriers that language creates, it's often easy to recognize similar deities, you know, outside of their own culture. So there's a few statements in there that aren't so true, really, and we're talking about the truth, and we're also talking about gods, of which Leto is telling us he is one. And in fact, we know he's not a god, unless we define that as simply something that's a bit beyond being a human, if you like, as opposed to some kind of form of homo superior. Yeah, so a few statements. Old Harry's game has a really good setup for whenever God arrives. He likes to monologue in dualistic in a dualistic manner, you know. So I am the alpha. He does lots of I am the alpha and the omega. I am this and I am the black and the white. I am the and it's at the point where the devil just starts taking the he is the ant on the deck. He was to start taking the piss out of him a bit for it. It's quite funny. Yes, indeed. So we've got this, you know, these dichotomies, this dualism, these paradoxes. And again, all sort of phrasing around the words truth and myth. You know, and the importance myths, like really storytelling, isn't it? The myths have a particular I don't know how you would put it, that separates myths from all other stories. Let's just see what Wikipedia has to say. Is a genre of folklore consisting primarily of narratives that play a fundamental role in a society. For scholars, this is totally different from the ordinary sense of the term myth, meaning a belief that is not true, as the veracity of a piece of folklore is entirely irrelevant to determining whether it constitutes a myth. They're often endorsed by religious and secular authorities and may be natural or supernatural in character. Many societies group their myths, legends, and history together, considering myths and legends to be factual accounts of the remote past. In particular, creation myths take place in a primordial age when the world had not achieved its later form. Origin myths explain how a society's customs, institutions, and taboos were established and sanctified. National myths are narratives about a nation's past that symbolize the nation's values, and there's a complex relationship between recital of myths and the reenactment or the enactment of rituals. There's no reference on that there. That's probably strongly linked to the Lord Raglan's idea of myth and ritual, tradition and ritual and mythology. The word myth comes from the ancient Greek mythos, meaning speech, narrative, or fiction. In term mythologia, story, legends, or storytelling combines the word mythos with the suffix logia, to study. Accordingly, Plato used mythologia as a general term for fiction or storytelling of any kind. The word was adapted into other European languages in the early 19th century in a much narrower sense as a scholarly term for a traditional story, especially one concerning the early history of a people or explaining a natural or social phenomenon, and typically involving supernatural beings or events. So there we go. That's just the start of it there on Wikipedia. What's a myth, if you like, the Greek mythos. I'm a bit of a humorist. I think that it's one of the reasons why it's interesting to look at the core myths, if you like, the origins of the stories, what they're really about. I think that there's an underlying, as much as they are stories, that I believe fundamentally that they're usually told about something that happened, if you see what I mean. And then the stories, emerge from that to become myth. Whereas a normal story can be just something made up, if you see what I mean, a pure fiction. I think there is something behind a myth that's not fictional, and that's what makes the stories different, if you like. Yeah, it's pretty much what it is, I think. If you had to explain it, The big reveal here, I suppose. Again, sorry, but the continuation of this about truth, about words, about myths, is that the mythology, and the substance of myths can be used by tyrants to manipulate the masses, to maneuver them for selfish design, as it's put here. And always remember that the Atreides do propaganda better than just about anybody. I'm wondering how much this chapter is propaganda, by the way. I'll explain when we get there. You see, I share it all with you, even the great mystery of all time, the mystery by which I compose my life. And again, we get a bit meta here. I reveal it to you in words. The only past which endures lies wordlessly within you. I was wondering, what does he mean there? DNA, etc. This is an argument again, by the way. This is something that appears in that which endures. The only thing that really endures, the only past which endures, lies wordlessly within you. This is an argument that pops up between the professor and the devil and Satan in old Harry's game. The response from that nothing really endures it from the professor is that DNA does. But he also gives the example of the stars being something from the past that endures into the present, if you like. The God Emperor fell silent then. I dared to ask, are those all the words that my Lord wishes me to preserve? Especially with the discussion about words themselves being loaded. This is Chenoeh being very, very brave again here. Anything else? Those are the words the God Emperor said, and I thought he sounded tired, discouraged. He had the sound of someone uttering a last testament. I recalled that he had said he would never see me again, and I was fearful, but I praised my teachers because the fear did not emerge in my voice. I want you could read that differently, couldn't you, by the way? Just in a question of how is this honest reportage. I recalled that he had said he would never see me again, and I was fearful. But I praised my teachers because the fear did not emerge in my voice. That kind of thing. But is there a bit of pride there? Possibly. Or is it? This is the thing. But I think this report's a little bit hard to tell. Is there a wee bit of pride with these little statements? And again, it's kind of with the knowledge that comes with what's being told to her. Is it fair enough, if you like, or is it honest reportage? Can we read that just normally? That it's just an eager sister sort of going, but I praise my teachers because the fear did not emerge in my voice. You know, phew, thank goodness, that kind of thing. Is it earnest or is it prideful? And I can't tell. But again, there's something else, so we'll maybe point it out. Do you know what this is, Chenoeh? Lord Leto, I said, these journals of which you speak, for whom are they written? For posterity after the span of millennia. I personalize these distant readers, Sister Chenoeh. I think of them as distant cousins filled with family curiosities. They are intent on unraveling the dramas which only I can recount. They want to make the personal connections to their own lives. They want the meanings, the truth. Again, this I've written here next to this, a bit meta, isn't it? To the characters in the future. But I think this speech here from the Leto is to us, the readers, from Frank, in a funny way. And if it's an interesting way of putting it, if you think about it, think about this almost as a dedication from the author to you. I think this is, you can just change the word them to you. I think of you as distant cousins filled with family curiosities. You're intent on unraveling the dramas which only I can recount. You want to make the personal connections to your own lives. You want the meanings, the truth. And again, I was just really enjoying reading this chapter. It's the God Emperor speaking to the future. And this whole chapter is very meta, I think. It's very self-referential. And always I think about what Frank has said about the Dune series is that it does speak to us, the reader, you know, and that he's not giving us any answers, but it's up to us to find out what we think, if you like, by looking at this. And it feels a bit meta for myself and for you guys, and possibly maybe sure because this is what we're doing. Are we Frank's distant cousins that he views like family curiosities? We're all related technically, aren't we? We are intent on unraveling the dramas which only he can recount. We want to make those personal connections to Frank's work with our own lives. We want meaning. We want the truth, don't we? We enjoy it that much. We see something in it. That's what we're about. That's what our business is here. As much as doing a literary book club for a bit of fun and so on, to pay attention to the words of an author, you know, to look out for the truths and the lies and the hybrids, you know, to unravel the dramas that he's chosen to construct for us as our own kind of our own demiurge, our own constructor of the world, our own archon. I think this chapter is very interesting, and I do think that's a little hello to the reader from Frank and the God Emperor. But you warn us against truth, Lord, I said. I've written here, see notes 28 and 29. There we are. Just jumping back to that in relation to that. Beware of the truth, gentle sister. Although much sought after, truth can be dangerous to the seeker. Myths or reassuring lies are much easier to find and believe. If you find a truth, even a temporary one, it can demand that you make painful changes. Conceal your truths within words. Natural ambiguity will protect you then. Words are much easier to absorb than are the sharp Delphic stabs of wordless portent. With words you can cry out in the chorus, why didn't someone warn me? But I did warn you. I warned you by I warned you by example, not with words. This is the warning he's given her about truth that we just had. You warn us against truth, Lord. He did indeed. Is it that he, and in relation to what we're reading, by the way, what he actually told her to do there is if you find a truth, even a temporary one, it can demand that you make painful changes. This bit, Conceal your truths within words. Natural ambiguity will protect you then. Is there something else to what we're reading here? Is there a truth concealed within these words? In other words, that Sister Chenoeh has done upon the advice of the God Emperor. You warn us against truth, Lord, I said. Indeed, all of history is a malleable instrument in my hands. Ooh, I have accumulated all of these pasts and possess every fact. Yet the facts are mine to use as I will, and even using them truthfully, I change them. What am I speaking to you now? What is a diary? A journal? Words? Again, I've written very meta. And again, the Lord Leto fell silent. I weighed the portent of what he had said, weighed it against the admonition of Reverend Mother Ch18, and against the things that the God Emperor had uttered to me earlier. He said I was his messenger, and thus I felt that I was under his protection and might dare more than any other. Thus it was that I said. So, in relation to what we were having a wee chat about there previously, that her fear did not emerge in her voice. No one's ever spoken to, the God Emperor's never talked to anybody but her like this. Her bravery, which is quite apparent. This bit again is being very brave. Loads of bravery from Sister Chenoeh. And the description of it here, she gives her reasoning. Again, is it straight up honest reportage, which makes her very likable, doesn't it? By the way, I want to stress this Sister Chenoeh is a very likable character. It's in the face of certain death, if you like. She's clever, she's smart, she's doing her job, and she's going a wee bit above and beyond, and she's demonstrating extreme bravery in the face of God and the devil, basically. This little bit here that I might dare more than any other. There is a little bit hyperbolic. She's looking pretty good, isn't she, in this chapter? It's meant to be her own words. Lord Leto, you have said that you will not see me again. Does that mean you're about to die? A very brave question. I swear it here in my record of the event. The Lord Leto laughed. Ha, ha, ha. Then he said, no, gentle sister, it is you who will die. You will not live to be a reverend mother. Do not be saddened by this, for by your presence here today, by carrying my message back to the sisterhood, by preserving my secret words, as well you will achieve a far greater status. You become here an integral part of my myth. Our distant cousins will pray to you for intercession with me. Ho, ho, ho. Again the Lord Leto laughed, but it was gentle laughter, and he smiled upon me warmly. I find it difficult to record here with that accuracy which I am enjoined to employ in every accounting such as this one. Yet in the moment that the Lord Leto spoke those terrible words to me, I felt a profound bond of friendship with him, as though some physical thing had leaped between us, tying us together in a way that words cannot fully describe. It was not until the instant of this experience that I understood what he had meant by the wordless truth. It happened, yet I cannot describe it. And that's the end of the Chenoeh Report's words. There's a bit more to come, and we'll jump back a wee bit. So the bravery of here, the question is that she asks is, does that mean you're about to die? Now, the answer that he gives is, well, can we say a spoiler alert? Cover your ears for 5 seconds. It's a lie. It's also true. If that makes sense. Um, he says, "No, gentle sister, it is you who will die. You will not live to be. You will not live to be a reverend mother." So it's not necessarily an immediate death, but there's a qualifier in there. It's a bit like geese or taboo, that kind of thing. It's a predestined moment in time that the God Emperor has seen. I swear it here, was it Lord Leto? By the way, I've written down here, you've said that you will not see me again. Does that mean you're about to die? But very brave again. I swear it here, my record event, the Lord Leto laughed. Then he said, I've written next to that, this is Leto's own internal bathos. That's for the character, not for the reader. It's him breaking his own tension here, I think. His next laugh is a kinder one, but there's something kind of theatrical about that one I got a sense of. But the language here as well, to Chenoeh, is, no, gentle sister, it is you who will die. You will not live to be a reverend mother. It's not a threat. It's a sad kind of thing. Do not be saddened by this, is what he tells her. You get the sense that he is saddened by it. For by your presence here today, by carrying my message back to the sisterhood, by preserving my secret words as well, you will achieve a far greater status. You become here an integral part of my myth. Our distant cousins will pray to you for intercession with me. The distant cousins, the family curiosities, that's the audience down the span of millennia that he mentioned earlier. These distant readers, Sister Chenoeh, I think of them as distant cousins. Our distant cousins, you're going to have a much bigger, you're going to be a big part of my story. You're going to be preserved as part of that story, part of that myth for all eternity. And poor old Sister Chenoeh has got real, knowledge, if it's come from the God Emperor, of her death, which makes me think a little bit about her character, by the way, in terms of what's just about what we're about to find out. But of her bravery, I think there's no doubt about it. Of her competence as a Bene Gesserit sister, she goes above and beyond. Is she a wee bit prideful? Is there a bit of storytelling in this? It doesn't really matter. Is the entire interview with the God Emperor organized by him to solicit certain responses, etc., to almost create a certain set of feelings within her? Am I that cynical in that sense, or is all of this natural reportage? But it is going to end up part of the myth. The response of this is it brings us to the conclusion of this idea of the wordless myth, if you like, the wordless event that is just life happening, the wordless truth. And that for a moment that she gets to share it with him. Basically by asking, does this mean you're going to die? And he goes, no, it's you that's going to die. The shock of that, if you like. But he's gentle after he smiles upon her warmly. We get her an admission that it's difficult to record correctly, which might be seen as a failure in her own role here. Yet in the moment that the Lord Leto spoke these terrible words to me, I felt a profound bond of friendship with him, as though some physical thing had leaped between us, tying us together in a way that words cannot fully describe. They're both aware of their own mortality, if you like. They both have, to a degree, prescience on it. I think that's the fact that they're going to die, the wordless truth. I think that's what it is. It was not until the instant of this experience that I understood what he had meant by the wordless truth. It happened, yet I cannot describe it. So this human recorder, this scribe, again, this is the author preserving mystery here, asking us to think about the wordless truth, but he's not going to expose what it is here. Though I think it's an awareness of their own mortality, their own imminent death, and that neither truly knows when that might be, if you like. The final part of this chapter is the archivist's note. Because of intervening events, the discovery of this private record is now little more than a footnote to history. Interesting because it contains one of the earliest references to the God Emperor's secret journals. For those wishing to explore further into this account, reference may be made to the archive records subheadings: Chenoeh, Holy Sister Quintinius Violet, Chenoeh Report, the and melange rejection medical aspects of. Footnote: Sister Quintinius Violet Chenoeh died in the 53rd year of her sisterhood, the cause being ascribed to melange incompatibility during her attempt to achieve the status of Reverend Mother. And there we go. That's our little poignant moment, isn't it? It's what makes her a really, really good character, I think. Of course, the end. She's merely Sister Chenoeh as we begin. God Emperor of Dune. And by the time we kind of have her last, this is her footnote in history. Gentle Sister Chenoeh is become Holy Sister Quintinius Violet Chenoeh. Friends of the God Emperor, I imagine, something like this. She'll have taken on a divine role within the mythology of the God Emperor. A fascinating chapter, though, and I think an absolute masterclass in writing from Frank Herbert here. How we run with these ideas of truth, of justice. Not of justice, of truth, of words, of tyranny, of myths, of the stories that we can create. The choice of words, the nature of the inquiry, if you like, all of these kind of things, how they can be used by tyrants, and the importance of getting across his feelings, his emotions, his emotional truth, if you like, his motives to the future, rather than leave it in the hands of future historians. He's safeguarding part of his self, if you like, with Sister Chenoeh. And it's such a strange little story, isn't it, that the Chenoeh Report, as it will become known, will become immortalized. And again, the contents of this must remain hidden. It must remain a secret. Fascinating stuff. I'll catch up with your comments here, folks. I'll get some fluids. Let's have a look. Just before Lido went, I was going to questions. Where do we get to? Something's in paradox here. If God, I read this one, haven't we? If gods are not responsible for anything except Genesis, how can their actions carry intentional meaning? So gods take responsibility for their own actions that convey truth. Not likely. Certainly not with the Greek gods, anyway. Logging the individual into the now, Cynthia said super. Yes, it makes sense that Leto was helping civilization focus on the present, key to survival. Also seems that a focus on now also means that abomination inner lives are no longer desired. I think with the God Emperor, the strong desire is not to focus too much in the prescient world into the future, because that was Paul's downfall. That's where he got trapped. And he does seem to holiday a fair bit in the past, doesn't he? Via other memory. Pardon me. Focus on now also means that abomination in our lives are no longer desired. Yeah, I suppose you're dealing with things that are all in the present, aren't you? You don't really need their advice too much. I suppose it's the nature of hypotheses and experiment, isn't it? In a way. Experience. That's the word I was looking for. Hypotheses and experience of the hypotheses that might lead you to inquire of other memory what their experience is, or has anyone got experience. So they say this final scene with Chenoeh reminds me of Leto's interaction with Hui. She would have asked the questions about his impending death. He even calls her gentle, a term of endearment for Leto. Yeah. Yes, indeed. Yes, I can see what you mean there. Yeah, it's an interesting little thing here, and we get the whole run of it. We get a character who's basically in the now of our story, even though we're looking all the way back. We get the conversation. We get it recorded in the first-person narrative, if you like, and we ultimately get that this document has become just ultimately a footnote. It's in a far, far future history. Beyond probably a couple of thousand years in the future, So it depends on how we look at it. I suppose I've got some scribbles here. Let me have a wee quick check on this. First of all, I was going Leto's attack on history, historical. I've made a wee note here, but it shows the influence of the Lucianic satire. See a true history and a Caromanopus, fake histories, etc. Pardon me, and their use in religion. How much of what Sister Chenoeh recorded was designed? These are some of the questions I've asked here. What draft of this Chenoeh report is it? When did she draft it? How long did she have to think about it? And I suppose using her own skills, it's reportage, the way a sister would be trained, but we even have this admission within it that from a certain point it's difficult to record here with that accuracy which I am enjoying to employ in every accounting, such as this one. Yet in the moment that the Lord Leto spoke these terrible words to me, I felt a profound bond of friendship with him, as though some physical thing had leaped between us. Is this accurate? Is it being honest? Tying us together in a way that words cannot fully describe? Is it a result of the terrifying, fact that her God has just told her you're going to die, and that's why I'm not going to see you again? So go off you go, write this stuff down, but make sure it doesn't get out to your superiors, and you're going to be a part of my story. Isn't that delightful, dear sweet Sister Chenoeh? I know it depends on your point of view, but as being a footnote in history, it's going to be, her status will be greater, than that if she had just been a Reverend Mother, which is surely to do with how people would look at you, your status, I think. So how much of what Sister Chenoeh recorded was designed is also what I've written down here. Leto's interview is apologia. He mythologizes Chenoeh. How reliable as a recorder is she? Look at her hyperbole, for example. Dare more than any other. And I've written, or is it just true that no other Bene Gesserit had dared this at this point? Is that just honest reportage? And is it her awareness of the fact? And because nobody had dared more, she decided to dare more than any other. Because, like, what the hell? I don't think he can kill me. It makes me, the whole Sister Chenoeh kind of thing and her braveness, it kind of reminds me of that story we were talking about the person that doesn't think they can die up until a certain moment happens. If you see, therefore they're invincible up until that moment. Doesn't mean you can't get badly wounded. This kind of thing. But no, she's her main characteristic, I think, is bravery within this chapter. But she becomes something that's almost, I don't know, that she shares something, friendship, a feeling that she can't fully describe, a bond with the God Emperor. And I think the wordless truth is possibly their fate, in a sense, because of this discussion, is similar in some ways. The archivist note, by the way, also suggests more about her bravery, because regardless of it, this is her words. The archivist note, we have to assume is a Bene Gesserit, possibly archivist, maybe not, but tells us that she died in the 53rd year of her sisterhood, the cause being ascribed to melange incompatibility during her attempt to achieve the status of Reverend Mother. So even knowing that she has this, that you will die before you become a Reverend Mother, even it's a bit like, these Greek prophecies, these Delphic prophecies that you get, that they're not quite what you think. You know what I mean? She goes ahead and tries to become a Reverend Mother, which is an extremely brave thing to do, I think, in light of the God Emperor's Delphic prophecy, if you like, and it is the process of becoming a Reverend Mother that actually kills her. it's the drug melange. So what we have is a melange intolerant Bene Gesserit sister, and Holy Sister Chenoeh. And so a very, I don't know, fascinating character. I love this entire chapter. I think it's brilliantly done. I've got more questions about it, and I come out of it wondering how much of this is propaganda, how much of it's a bit like whenever the God Emperor is ready for meeting Duncan Idaho for the first time. It's kind of almost like a play, isn't it? He takes the stage and all the blackness and then the lights come on, and and scene. How much of it is theater in order to create the Chenoeh Report, if that makes sense? Is there design behind it? Our sister Chenoeh's. Oh, I've got more to do with this actually. The myth making here done by Leto and Chenoeh. The Bene Gesserit are aware of this kind of thing. Is she aware of the myth making process here? She should be, because she's a Bene Gesserit. And then I've written next to this, is she therefore a willing participant here in the myth making process? Or I've also written, is she an active and willing participant here in the Chenoeh Report, in her writing, in her words? And if we run by what we've read in the chapter, in her words that tell a truth, if you like, about the myth of the Tyrant, if we run the whole thing backwards, how's that? I think it's very, very interesting. I think it's an absolutely brilliantly written chapter. Quintinius Violet Chenoeh, by the way. Quintinius is the diminutive form of Quintus, which we talked about Tertius the other week. Would mean fifth, and so again would be a Roman sort of prenomen, if you like, a first name indicating your order of birth. Comes from the word quinque, which is 5. Violet now, her middle name. That's got me going all over the place, and you can tell me if you think this is a load of hooey or not, but I've got Violet is from the Latin viola, name of a flower, and in Greek the name of this flower is Aeon. And I was thinking about Euripides' Aeon in relation to Sister Chenoeh, and the story about it, and it's to do with Apollo and an oracle and all of this stuff. Pardon me. Aeon would be the person, the eponymous person who gives his name to the Ionian Sea and so on. Ionian Peninsula, Ion. Sorry. Bear with me a second. Disambiguation. Let's have a look at it on time in ancient Laconia, Greece. Ion mythology. There we go. Let's see what it says. Ionis, mean going, is the eponymous ancestor of the Ionians. According to Euripides, Ion was the illegitimate child of Creusa, the daughter of the Athenian king Erechtheus and wife of Xuthus by the god Apollo. According to the earliest known mythological accounts, including the Hesiodic catalogue of women, Ion was the legitimate son of Creusa and Xuthus. And it's to do with Euripides' play, Ion. There, if you look it up, Ion in mythology, you'll get a synopsis of the play. It's to do with, I suppose, a mother leaving her child for exposure because he's the son of a god. And this child Ion is taken to be raised by the Delphic oracle, by the Pythoness. The play is kind of about why the gods are absent from our lives. If you like, though, at the end of it, you do get a sort of Deus Ex Machina turning up. I'm getting growled at here. Oh, goodness gracious me. Anyway, I was kind of basically also that there's eventually kind of Athena comes down and sorts it all out in a Deus Ex Machina kind of way, because mother and son almost trying to kill each other. And Ion and his mother Creusa are united. And they're basically told not to tell Xuthus that Apollo's really his father, and that Creusa is his mother. Creusa is his mother. So that they're told to keep this a secret. Um, of the progeny of this child of Apollo, if you like, unless it drives Zuthus basically bonkers, if you like. Have a wee look at Ion, and if anybody want to check out the kind of plot of it, there are elements within Ion. Sorry, I'm getting growled at. I'm going to do something about it. That I thought were within this story here. Apollo would be one of the overlays for, of course, Leto and Paul. And it's in relation to keeping a secret, I suppose, being told by a god to keep a secret for as long as Zuthus is alive, so it doesn't bother him, this kind of thing. And I suppose it's to do with the absence of gods, the return of gods, and a little bit of Deus Ex Machina here and there. I was just kind of having a nosy through, and I thought I could see some connections, but I'd have to read the play again to be certain. But Ion would be another name for violet, if you like, for the flower. Now, folks, for those of you who are interested in this, we're going to have a good old wee quick chat now. Because this was a short chapter, I've got about 5 pages of notes for you. We're going to explain the whole Gnostic connection to the God Emperor, to Abraxas, the idea of Abraxas, Abrasac, and Yaldabaoth, and how all of that works with concepts of supreme beings and beings that create the physical world, if you like, demiurges. I think we're going to try and show a connection to this from Platonic thought all the way through a good couple of thousand years up to some still kind of esoteric, kind of crazy stuff. So if you give me a wee second, I'm going to see to my doggies and make sure they won't get out here, and I'll be right back. So, and I'll catch up with your comments, if any. And I think you'll find this interesting. Hopefully, I've got it organized in a way that will sort of make it not too difficult to understand or explain. We're just going to stick really to the stuff that we need to, because we could get lost in this nonsense. So bear with me, I will be right back. Thanking you. Hello, folks. Sorry about that. Had to let the ladies out. Oh, goodness gracious me. Yeah, we're going to have a week. Promise we would do this tonight because we had quite a short chapter. By the way, what a great chapter it was, I think. I really just enjoyed the whole construction of the story, of this little isolated fragment, if you like, one of the little peregrinations that the God Emperor goes upon. And this interaction with Sister Chenoeh, I love the way the timing of it is set. We get the shift to the first person narrative. We get that within the Stolen Journals as well with Leto. But it's nice to have a separation here. We also get the archivist, that little addition, making it, giving it that sense of history, that sense of a record. And it certainly, it's a sad little chapter. It's poignant, I think. And it shows, what a nice guy the God Emperor is in a funny kind of way. It's a tyrant, saying I've got feelings too, and every tyrant, sings the blues, this kind of thing. She's a character who serves two masters, like a number of characters we've seen before. As I said, we pointed out Duncan Idaho serves two masters, Leat Kynes serves two masters. Sister Chenoeh serves two masters here. And yeah, it's basically a young, we get the sense that she's a young sister of the Bene Gesserit here, not too old perhaps. And that she's doing the best by her training. And she's sort of up to the task, if you like. We get comments a wee bit in the previous chapter with the Bene Gesserit and the embassy about the basic skills of the runner, the sister who turns up as the runner and who hasn't gone above and beyond her job, but has been adequate. Here we have a Bene Gesserit who is above and beyond, I think, and is more than adequate for the task. She's exceptional, if we're to believe what we're told. She's bold, she's brave, she's obedient. And dares more than any other. She's a great character, and again, it's kind of the bravery that we can attest to from a different source other than her own words at the end, that she dies trying to be a Reverend Mother, even though she knows the warning, even though she knows the nature of the prophecy. She goes for it anyway. She's brave to the point of her bravery kills her, if you like. But it shows a particular determination of character. I think Sister Chenoeh is fantastic. And again, we can treat that as being slightly mythologized, has possibly a touch of hyperbole, or it is in fact that she did her job so well that this is her perfect reportage up to the end, and at the very least, the end is honest about her ability to record, because otherwise, why need to? No point in saying it. She could easily conceal that, So it was just within the cynical nature of looking at being a cynic and looking at the God Emperor there, and this account, or is it genuinely what it is that gives us certainly the God Emperor hopes that the Chenoeh report gives us a insight into his nature, that he can be gentle, the language gentle that he puts on to Sister Chenoeh, that he can be thoughtful, that he has feelings. And it's important that they're recorded. His motives and his feelings are of key importance to him for his legacy, because it has to. I think there has to be something more to it rather than just an awful lot of dead people. I think I get that sense. So let me just catch up with your comments, folks. Here. Let's see, where do we get to? Arrakis here, lead them out into the future. Locking the individual into the nice of the soup pot. Yes, it makes sense that Leto is helping civilization focus on the present, key to survival. Also seems that a focus on now also means that abomination in our lives are no longer desired. I think you've hit, soup pot says, I think you've hit something on the head. This chapter is superb. It's a great chapter. It stands out, I think, within the book. It's a short one, but it's a really good one. So this is this final scene with Chenoeh reminds me of Leto's interaction with Hui. So I have read this one before. She would have asked the question about his impending death. He even calls her gentle, a term of endearment from Leto. So they said from the archivist note, it seems that Chenoeh's account was secret for too long, longer than Leto intended. When finally found, it didn't mean as much as it might have, just a footnote. Again, that depends on, as we move forward, we're getting future historians at this point. And I think that we always end up with historians from further on down within the Dune series. So we'll get somebody else looking back at it. And again, at that point, as a note within the archives of the Bene Gesserit, how she's seen. She's recorded as Holy Sister. I don't know, Quintinius Violet. I'm wondering, is that just an appellation of the Bene Gesserit? I got the sense that something holy about her because of the God Emperor, that she had venerated status, and the God Emperor even says that distant cousins will pray to you for intercession with me. She'll become a minor deity, something in the orbit of Leto II herself, a minor cult. Who knows? Finally found it didn't mean as much as it might have, just a footnote. I don't know. It's become part of the myth. He's told us so. Depends on how well that lasts and how it changes. Sootpot saying, a deep fear not to upset the golden path. She's certainly complacent, keeping her secret beyond Leto's death. Sootpot says, cut me, do I not bleed? And Leto never said Leto never. Carlos saying, sorry, got to go, catch you all next time. Ciao, Carlos. See you later, Carlos. Take it easy and all the best. And thank you for popping in as always. Yeah, so what we're going to do, folks, just for the end here, is quickly run through the nature of Leto, the dualistic nature of him. This idea of Abraxas, also known as Abrasax, and also there's what do we call it? What's the term I'm looking for? It's cognate with another being called Yaldabaoth. So we're going to quickly explain where all of this stuff comes from, if you like. And it's from Gnosticism mainly. Some of this stuff comes from Neoplatonism, from Hermeticism, from Kabbalah. Some of it comes in from Eastern religions, but we'll talk about essentially what it is. Gnosticism, from Gnostikos, meaning having knowledge, from the word gnosis, which is knowledge or awareness, is more like personal knowledge, if you like, are a group of religions that formed out of the 1st and 2nd centuries AD. What they are is a synthesis of all sorts of things. So it's the term Gnostic in this sense refers to a whole bunch, tons of them, of sort of esoteric religions that appeared around this time that were a synthesis of all sorts of things, a hybridization, if you like, of all sorts of thinking around the time. And essentially, some of the ideas that you'll find in Gnosticism come from ideas within Greek philosophy, particularly Platonic philosophy, which develops down over a period of about 600 years. You have what we would call Platonism, middle period Platonism, if you like, and Neoplatonism, which is kind of around the 3rd century AD onwards. So you've got about 600 years of these ideas, of Platonic ideas, shifting through the consciousness of the Greco-Roman world. I suppose at the time of Christ, then you have, of course, the Roman Empire it's arrived, and the process of making an empire, if you like, means all sorts of things that are going on. You end up with a common language in play, which is Greek, as a lingua franca, for want of a better term. You have the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. You have Roman roads allowing trade and quick movement of people, all sorts of things. The Roman Pax itself, keeping people safe, this kind of thing. Taxation, wealth, literacy, all of the questions that, what did the Romans ever do for us? You have to throw that into the mix. And so you've got, at the time, basically, the Christian sects, which are starting to appear, which are themselves a sect of Judaism at the time. Judaism has kind of been absorbing different different ideas, particularly Hellenistic ideas. Some other stuff. There's a carry through from Egyptian mythology and language. What else have we got? The Greco-Roman mysteries. We've got Judeo-Christian ideas, Greek philosophy, especially Platonic philosophy, Syriac and Egyptian ideas and mythology, Hellenistic thinking, their myths, their mysteries, Zoroastrianism, which has a kind of dualism to it. All sorts of things go to create a whole bunch of different religions that are essentially a synthesis of a whole bunch of these things, and they have many, many, many variations, whether they be slight or great. And essentially the key to a lot of this is that what the ideas that they kind of take out of Judaism and early Christianity, Egyptian mythology, all of this kind of stuff, the Zoroastrianism, is that there must be a dual nature to God, if you like. And in a sense, what that is that you have a supreme being, which is just one all thing, if you like, and then you have another deity who's what's called a demiurge. And this is to do with the God Emperor being a type, well, interestingly enough, the character of Abraxas is one of these. So the character of the God Emperor is kind of based on Abraxas, Yaldabaoth, and a whole bunch of other things. But just in terms of to explain the duality of his nature, what this is all about, and where does Frank get it from, we'll run through this now. I'm going to jump to my next notebook in a wee second. So the Supreme Being also is like one thing hidden from the material universe, pure, complete, good, and perfect. The idea is that such a being couldn't possibly create a universe where there's evil in it. And so what we get is another being that kind of emanates from this one, who's called the Demiurge. This being will be the creator of the material universe, the world, our reality as we know it, and is associated with things like the nous, which we'll get to in a moment. Evil can be seen as evil, can be flawed or inferior to the first being, if you like, as a second god or a second deity. So we get a dualistic, what you call cosmic dualism. Supreme being, all good, pure, couldn't have possibly created the universe, and another being called the Demiurge, which is the creator of the universe. So this supreme being is also known as the monad, the one, the absolute, ion teleos. What else have we got? Bythos, the proarche, hierarch, the ineffable parent, the primal father. You're getting a sense here that there's lots of different names for these beings. For this being, we'll get many, many offshoots of different religions, if you like. Within Platonic, Middle and Neoplatonic philosophy, if you like, also some schools of Neo-Pythagoreanism, the demiurge is an artisan-like figure, like a smith, an artisan, a creator, who built and maintains the physical universe. So it comes from the Greek word demiurgos, which is the word for a craftsman, an artisan. It also can mean someone who, a producer, a creator. What have I written here? And I've also made a wee note here that just the Platonic period, if you like, the range of the Platonic schools goes from about 360 BC onwards, about 350, 360 BC onwards to about 380 plus. So what you get is, I suppose, Gnosticism turning up, I said, 1st, 2nd century AD, at which point it's firmly well established in and around quite a few parts of the ancient world. It's in the Roman Empire, it's in Greece, it's in Judea, it's in Egypt, all of these places. And its influence as it goes down through the years will end up influencing sort of esoteric Western religions such as Rosicrucianism, Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, Freemasons, the Mormons. It's a big part of Helena Blavatsky's theosophy. What do we say there? We've Aleister Crowley's Thelema and his magic systems. It influenced Armanism and Ariosophy, which ultimately influenced the Thule Society, which influenced the Nazis. It influenced the child. Its influence can be felt in modern day religions such as the Church of Satan, the Church of Scientology. It's had an influence on L. Ron Hubbard, and even modern day UFO religions. So it's something that, as much as it was kind of a competing set of ideas with what you would call Orthodox Christianity at the time, it kind of it became the heresy, if you like, seen as heretical, and kind of bits of it have filtered down through the years, through the thousands of years, to influence an awful lot of kind of esoteric ideals that have themselves influenced society greatly. And it's ultimately going to have an influence on Carl Jung, which is where Frank's kind of versions, I think, of this come from. And let me see, just to grab now. So that's the end, by the way, of our volume 1 book. That's our, what do we say there? 10, that's volume 11, technically, of our notes. We're on to volume 12. So this is just in relation to a character that's like the God Emperor, and you can check some of this stuff out on Wikipedia, folks. Where are we? Notes on the Abraxas Gnosticism. Right, so all of these religions have certain ideals, if you like. And one of them is the concept of Yaldabaoth, and Yaldabaoth is cognate with Abraxas, by the way, so we'll just put that down there. Yaldabaoth appears in the Gnostic religious systems of the following groups. So we have these are different Gnostic groups, just to give you a sense of how many they are. I've just got a few here. But we've got the Archontic, the Sethian, and the Ophite systems. We've got the Martianists. We've got the Valentianists. Within Plato, Middle Platonism, Neoplatonism. Let's see, it corresponds with the Basildean, Abraxas, and Abrasax. So we're going to come to the Basilidians, in a moment. The Great Archon in the Gnostic Christianity. So this is a character, Yaldabaoth and Abraxas. We're just mentioning some of the many Gnostic systems, what would we call it, sects, if you like, offshoots. You'll find it's related to stuff in Manichaeism and Judaism as well. So just to give you a wee bit, one of the main groups within this Gnostic sect, if you like, these sects around this time, was the Basilidians. Named for Basilides. Now, have I got anything on him? Basilides is an early Christian Gnostic teacher from in Alexandria, and he's active between the years 117 to 161 AD. So Abraxas, again, is an idea from this. We're going to explain where it comes from just to get there. So Abraxas, Abrasax, Yaldabaoth, all of these are kind of the same as the God Emperor. In many ways. So the Basilides beliefs, basically, which are a theogony, amount to that we have this universal God and the demiurge, if you like. But from the deity that's an ungendered father, the first principle, the monad, if you like, you get 5 emanations. So the idea within Gnostic things, you might get in genealogy, so and so begat so and so and so and so begat so and so. Each of the things that follows on here in the sequence emanates from the thing prior to it, if you like. And this is what they are. So the 5 emanations from the Father are the nous, which is the mind, logos, which is the word, phronesis, which is prudence, phronesis sophia, which is prudent wisdom, and dynamis, which is power. So, in other words, logos emanated out of nous, phronesis emanated out of logos, phronesis sophia emanated from phronesis, and dynamis emanated from phronesis sophia. There's also a belief in a primeval Ogdoad. So, in other words, each thing gives birth to the next, if you like, but it's not really that in that sense. It's that each thing emanates from its predecessor. So those concepts, then, if we apply them over, God, this is mad, this stuff, isn't it? We're nearly through it, folks. Is that we have this supreme being who's good, and then we have this demiurge. Now, depending on which of these groups that you pick, some see him as being he, it, or whatever, as being good. Some see it as being bad. So the supreme being, names for that supreme being we have are the monad, the ungendered father, the first principle. Jesus is considered the first from the first being. Abraxas, okay, and we also have then names for the demiurge include Yaldabaoth, Abraxas, and then this is the Abrahamic gods' names are in here, by the way, as well. Yahweh, El, Jehovah, Yahweh, this kind of thing are there. Now, the interesting thing about those two is that within within all of these different religions, all these different variations of these ideas of this kind of cosmic dualism that kind of presents almost a Socratic approach to trying to figure out why the world is bad, and coming up with a kind of divine argument for it, if you like, that there must be a perfectly good being that's got nothing to do with it, if that's one of the attributes of God, being omnibenevolent, and therefore there must have been some other demiurge thing that he created to create everything else. It kind of falls into the who made the creator kind of argument, if you like. And the answer is the monad. So this influence of these ideas can be greatly seen in Gnosticism. A lot of this stuff disappears, and like all Greek and Roman thought, returns via the Renaissance, which is why you'll see its influence on groups like the Rosicrucians in the 1600s. Probably the most famous Rosicrucian I know would be John Dee. The James Bond link to him. Queen Elizabeth I's spy, wasn't he? A royal mathematician. He was one. By the way, sorry, I forgot to read something, and it was just in terms of I got this little chart, which I was mucking about with all of these different esoteric religions, but it was a quick copy down from just if anybody wants to check this out. It's a very good kind of genealogical thing. It's Western esotericism family tree on useful charts on YouTube. That's where I've got a lot of this kind of info from. Just into relation to the influence of Gnosticism down through the ages, if you see what I mean. Let me just put that there. So Frank's heavily into Carl Jung. Carl Jung is heavily into Gnosticism, who looks at it from a psychological, psychoanalytical perspective, probably because it presents the idea of a divided cosmogony, if you like, and how that might be applied, along with other ideas from Greek mythology, this kind of thing, to understanding dreams and the human mind, etc. Pardon me, I didn't know this. I was having a wee look at it earlier, but the influence of Gnosticism on Carl Jung is so great. Let me see, what's it called? The Jung Codex. Let me just look this up for you quickly. Now, this is interesting. This is how much he was into it. As the Jung Codex, named after Carl Gustav Jung, is also known as the Nag Hammadi Codex I. Is a rare ancient papyrus from the 4th century containing early Gnostic Christian texts. Named in honor of psychoanalyst Carl Jung, it contains 4 primary treatises, including the highly influential Gospel of Truth. Goodness, its discovery was one of 13 papyrus codices discovered in 1945 near the town of Nag Hammadi in Upper Egypt. I'm sure you're all familiar with the Nag Hammadi texts. They're quite famous. The Jung connection was that this specific volume was separated from the rest of the Nag Hammadi trove, smuggled out of Egypt, and acquired by the Carl Gustav Jung Institute in Zurich in 1951. Following a dispute over ownership after Jung's death, the codex was finally returned to the Coptic Museum in Cairo in 1975. That all sounds a bit dodgy, doesn't it? Yeah, it was acquired by the Carl Gustav Jung Institute in Zurich for him, by the way. There's the next Indiana Jones film, isn't it? Indiana Jones and the Jung Codex. It sounds like it was nicked, very obviously for him. It's a particular thing. So that's how much Jung was into his Gnosticism, and we get a whole bunch of this in his 7 sermons to the dead, which Septem Sermones ad Mortuos, which we find in Young's Red Book, which was compiled between 1914 and 1930. Its other name is the Liber Novus, which means the new book. New book is he ascribed to, now in this book, the 7 sermons to the dead are ascribed to Basilides, the chap we've been talking about, who presented us with the 5 emanations, and his particular brand of Gnosticism, Christian Gnosticism, is the Basilidean sect, if you like, or system. So the Carl Gustav Jung, we've got this connection to Basilides, and Abraxas is the great archon in Basilides' particular system, as I said. We get the connection, and by the way, I've written here, by the way, if you look up Basilides, to look up, let me just quickly look at it here. I've said to look this up, to look at his legacy on Wikipedia. There's a section called Legacy. Gnosticism was throughout eclectic, and Basilides superadded an eclecticism of his own. Antecedent Gnosticism, Greek philosophy, and the Christian faith and scriptures all exercised a powerful and immediate influence over his mind. It is evident at a glance that his system is far removed from any known form of Syrian or original Gnosticism. Like that of Valentinus, it had been remolded in a Greek spirit, but much more completely. Ancient writers usually name Basilides before Valentinus, but there is little doubt that they are at least approximately contemporaries, and it is not unlikely that Valentinus was best known personally from his sojourn at Rome, which was probably the last of the recorded stages of his life. There is at all events no serious chronological difficulty in supposing that the Valentian system was the starting point from which Basilides proceeded to construct, by contrast, his own theory, and this is the view which a comparison of doctrines suggests. Let's see, at no point unless it to be the retention of the widely spread term archon is Basilides nearer than Valentius to the older Gnosticism, while several leading Gnostic forms or ideas which he discards or even repudiates are held fast by Valentinus. Such are descent from above, pulling forth or pullulation, syzygies of male and female powers, and the deposition of faith to a lower level than knowledge. Further, the unique name given by Basilides to the Holy Spirit is the limitary spirit, together with the place assigned to it, can hardly be anything else than a transformation of the strange Valentinian limit. Just discussing basically his importance on things there, I suppose, in his place in the chronology of it. You also get the idea of syzygies there, which are very important to Carl Gustav Jung's ideas, particularly that of the collective unconscious, and we find tons of them in the Dune series. So Abraxas is kind of linked up to abracadabra, this kind of thing. It's almost like an apotropaic word. Its original meaning is kind of lost in origin, but we get these various Abraxas stones and gems, by the way, which I think we've talked about. And they're generally Basilidean in origin. But ultimately, I suppose the idea does come from Greek philosophy. Now, Abraxa, just to give you some stuff here on it then, as we've talked about, it's kind of like a worm-like, snake-like creature with sometimes a lion's head, sometimes a cockerel's head. And we got with the description, by the way, of Leto being the lion of the Atreides as well. Basically looks a bit like the God Emperor. So Abraxa, just some things here. I will read to you from Young's Sermons for the Dead. But Abraxa, in terms of science fiction, by the way, is the original name for Utopia. It's the old name for the city in Thomas More's Utopia. If you see it, it's what it was called before it was called Utopia. And again, shows you, I suppose, that being a product of the Renaissance, the arrival of this kind of stuff to Western readers. So we have Abraxas or Abrasac in Utopia in 1516. We'll also find it mentioned in the Infernal Dictionary, published in 1818 by Jacques Collin de Plancy. And we also find it in Aleister Crowley's The Gnostic Mass or Ecclesia Gnostica in 1913. I've also written see Wikipedia for the term Abraxas. I'll pop in the spelling here for you, folks. Abraxas. There we go. That's who we're talking about. So these are quotes about Abraxas from Carl Jung. And the first one here is from the second sermon, from Jung's Sermons for the Dead, or Sermons to the Dead. Here it is. Abraxas. He is less definite than God or devil. Abraxas is activity. Nothing can resist him but the unreal. Abraxas stands above the sun god and above the devil. And if the pleroma were capable of having a being, Abraxas would be its manifestation. Pleroma there is the spiritual universe, if you like, as opposed to the physical universe. It's the abode of where such a being as the monad, this idea of the one pure God, if you like, would be, and it represents the entire totality of that divinity's power and existence, if you like, if that makes any sense. That's what pleroma is. So I'll just read that again. Abraxas, he is less definite than God or devil. Abraxas is activity. Nothing can resist him but the unreal. Abraxas stands above the sun god and above the devil. If the pleroma were capable of having a being, Abraxas would be its manifestation. So that's from the second sermon to the dead. And then we have this one from the third sermon. That which is spoken by God the Son is life. That which is spoken by the devil is death. Abraxas speaketh that hallowed and accursed word, which is life and death at the same time. Abraxas begetteth truth and lying, good and evil, light and darkness. I'll read that again, sorry. Abraxas begetteth truth and lying, good and evil, light and darkness in the same word and in the same act. Wherefore is Abraxas. So those are some quotes about Abraxas from Carl Jung's Sermons to the Dead, found in the Red Book. And then we also get the idea of Abraxas. Just lifted this from Wikipedia, but I've scribbled all this down here because it's just good to have in the notes. From Hermann Hesse's Damien, which is published in 1919. References by some of the characters within that book here. Again, I've lifted this from Wikipedia. This is Matt Damien in the book. The bird fights its way out of the egg. The egg is the world. Who would be born must first destroy. Sorry, I'll read that again. Who would be born must first destroy a world. The bird flies to God. That God's name is Abraxas. It appears that Abraxas has much deeper significance. We may conceive of the name as that of Godhead, whose symbolic task is the uniting of godly and devilish elements. And then Abraxas doesn't take exception to any of your thoughts or any of your dreams. Never forget that. But he will leave you once you become blameless and normal. I've made a wee note here. There's a similarity a little bit to the idea of Arimaneus, who's an old Greek deity, a god of light, who's probably cognate with the Zoroastrian Ahriman. Now, there's also, interestingly enough, a little quote about Abraxas from Salman Rushdie's Midnight's Children. I had to read that I read that for my, God, when was that? For my Irish Studies degree, oddly enough. But Writers in Exile, it was a course to do with that. Midnight's Children. So they were children who are born on midnight at the moment. India gets its independence from Britain, basically. I think it's 1949. Children born at midnight that day are known as Midnight's Children in the country, and I believe Salman Rushdie is one of them, if I'm not mistaken, if I can remember anything about it, which I can't. That's sad when you're reading that many things at once. So this is from the chapter in Midnight's Children called Abracadabra, according to Wikipedia. Abracadabra, not an Indian word at all. A Kabbalistic formula derived from the name of the supreme god of the Basilidean Gnostics, containing the number 365, the number of the days of the year and of the heavens, and of the spirits emanating from the god of Abraxas. So in particular, I suppose the idea that these 365 is it eons, I think, or something like that, within these other divinities, and I think according to this idea that would include things like the Greek gods and so on. Zeus would have been one of these deities. The devil, I think, is one as well, as this changes down through the various esoteric religions that take these core ideas down through the centuries, like Rosicrucianism and the Masons and so on and so forth, things like that. There's connections all over the place. So ultimately, through doing a bit of research here, the key to it, I suppose, it's associated a bit like, abracadabra, like this kind of magic word. Abraxas, the name of this being, that essentially becomes both the monad and the demiurge. Whereas we have various, this is the madness of it all, I suppose. You get to see how, at a time when people can start, literacy is on the increase, I suppose, in a certain part of the world, but people can write all sorts of things. And here we get many, just because you can write something, Bob's your uncle, you can create a religion and get some followers. And there's so many of them. But ultimately, we end with the monad and the demiurge, if you like it. And Abraxas itself is a synthesis of both. You're not going crazy, because earlier I was reading, yes, that we have one of the names for the monad, this one supreme being, is Abraxas. Then we were reading one of the names for the demiurge, this not as good as, constructor of the universe, is Abraxas as well. And it's some of them see him as good, some of them see him as bad. But ultimately, and I think it's possibly because of that duality, that you get some kind of blurring together into this concept, the supreme archon, if you like, the supreme ruler of Abraxas, which comes from the Basilidean sect of Gnostic Christianity, that is a synthesis, funnily enough, of if you kind of looked at it from a dialectic kind of viewpoint, the monad would be your thesis, the demiurge would be your antithesis, and the synthesis of those two concepts is Abraxas. And this is what we have in the God Emperor. Now, some books to look at this, if you like. So basically what I'm saying here, we've got Carl Jung looked back at Hermeticism, alchemy, Jewish Kabbalah, Christian Gnosticism, and even all the way back to Platonic ideas to get his concepts of gnosis, of the Gnostic ideals, if you like, and this idea of this concept of Abraxas. So there's a lecture online. I believe you can find an audio version of it. It's called The Search for Root. Sorry, I'll say that again. The Search for Roots, Carl Gustav Jung and the Tradition of Gnosis. And then we have a couple of books by Stephen A. Huller, which were referenced there. One is the Gnosis of Carl Gustav Jung. And then we have another one, which is the Gnostic Jung and the 7 Sermons to the Dead. So the 7 Sermons to the Dead are online. And if you do a wee quick word search online, you can type in Abraxas, you'll find it mentioned 19 times within those sermons, the 7 sermons. So the Abraxas idea that Frank is using here is Jungian, but it itself goes all the way back to the 3rd century BC, possibly earlier. Pardon me. And that's what the God Emperor is in this sense. He is the concept of Abraxas. He is Shai Hulud and Ch18 in one. He is the monad. He is the demiurge. All of these kind of dualistic ideas. He is good and evil. He is both the creator and not the creator. And it's very interesting to look at Gnosticism. You can get completely lost in it. Ultimately, you get a lot of these things declared as heresy, etc. And the Romans try to sort of ratify and organize what Christianity should be. That you do get some groups. I suppose there's the Jewish Kabbalah interested in what's the word I'm looking for? Influenced in some ways by this too. But it goes on to affect a lot of esoteric ideas, if you like, sort of slightly underground, bit dodgy kind of religions throughout the years, secret societies, all of this kind of stuff as secret knowledge. And the use of words as magic and power. As I said, the kind of Abraxas word itself can almost be seen in the way a Gorgon's head, a Medusa head, would almost be used as a Gorgon ion, if you know what I mean. And apotropaic symbols, things to ward off evil, magic spells, and this kind of stuff. So that's basically what I got out of it. And I just did a wee doodle at the end of this just to show you. There you go. That Leto II is both Abrasax and Abraxas. Abrasax and Abraxas, and Yaldabaoth and Yaldabraoth and Jaldabraoth, just alternative spellings. He's Demiurge and Monad in one. He's all of these, and he's the God Emperor. He's part human, part worm, part God. But very much within the Dune series, he has the behavior, if you like, this duality that Abraxas has. He has the appearance of Abraxas and Yaldabraoth as well. And as I said, it really is the concept of a God that's not really good, that constructs the universe, that adjusts reality and maintains it, if you like. So there we go, folks. That's Abraxas for you, and that's the connection to the God Emperor and Frank Herbert, is that Frank Herbert's heavily into Carl Jung. A lot of these ideas, some of these concepts of the idea of Gnosticism within, I suppose, esoteric religions, filters down ultimately into what Jungian and even Freudian psychology are, which are also kind of attempts to examine dreams in the human mind through hybridizing myths, especially the Greek myths, and kind of plonking their own interpretation, adding their own thing to them. Probably a touch of Gnosticism being added here to seems like quite a lot actually to Carl Jung's work here. So there's things, as I said, we even talked about things like syzygies there and stuff like that we've seen in the work throughout the Dune series. And I think this is, I believe like Carl Jung's first mandala that he drew in terms of the Jungian mandalas that we taught was in relation to this stuff as well. And if you lots of worms and serpents within them, we'll maybe dig them out just to show you a wee bit. We should have a look at those in relation to the God Emperor and the idea of the worms and stuff. I'll maybe remind myself to do that next week, actually. Let's see, Jung's mandalas. I'll scribble that down. That would have been a good sort of visual aid to that there. But I have to say, I'm going to wrap things up for tonight, folks. So there you go, just to run through some stuff. The idea of Abraxas comes from Gnosticism, and particularly the concept of the demiurge, and it's your divinity is separated into a creature, a supreme being, and a demiurge. The demiurge being a craftsman who makes reality, if you like, the monad being a pure thing, concept of God. And it's out of all of these different hybridizations and syntheses of these different religions, ideas, and aspects of philosophies, and the different cultures that are within empire back then, if you like. Ultimately, the character of Abraxas, and it emerges most likely out of the Basilidian sect of Gnosticism, of Christian Gnosticism, ends up being a character that represents both, if you like, as a synthesis of both the demiurge and the supreme being. Can be good and can be evil, can be pure and aside, can be the creator of the universe. All of this, it's all a bit of a hodgepodge, and sooner or later somebody was going to put the two of them together. And I said it's interesting that if we were talking about the persuasive argument and how it works the other week, and we were talking about the dialectic and how the dialectic works is actually, if you could apply it to this philosophically speaking. That you can take the demiurge as the supreme being as a pro or a for or a thesis, and the demiurge is against, or the evil or the bad or the antithesis, and create your synthesis by merging the two. And if you did that dialectic approach with those two things, the synthesis that you get is Abraxas. Our hero of our story, the leader of the second, who's a worm, a serpent, who's the oracle, who's the monster, who's all of mankind, who's part machine, who's good and evil, certainly by his actions and his words, by the looks of it, So I just thought, there you go, folks, we'd explain that a wee bit too. That's the Abraxas connection, and it's a real thing that comes out of Gnosticism, and it's very, very many subsets, if you like, or variations in the first couple of centuries AD, and is influenced by Greek thought and all sorts of things, mythology, language and culture out of Greece, out of Syria, out of Egypt, out of Rome, all sorts of stuff. it's you get lost in it very easily. It's all very fascinating. So there we go. That was Abraxas. Cynthia saying, thanks, Doc. And oh, you're welcome, Cynthia. I'm going to go get some milk because we're out here. Super saying, have a great week ahead, guys. And while I'll be rewatching this episode, thanks for all your labours, Doc. No worries. I hope I made sense of it anyway, too. That's where we get Abraxas. It's a thing that filters down into the modern esoteric religions like theosophy and stuff like that as well. Even ended up with the Nazis, Church of Scientology. Its influence is everywhere. But it has a big connection to Jungian psychoanalysis and psychology, which is where Frank gets his connection to it. And yeah, we'll definitely bring up some of those images for next time. I think we've got, just to wrap up, folks, we've got a very big chapter for you next time. I think, yeah, oh dear, got my work cut out. It's a good one. Isn't it the attack? I think. I believe. Or maybe it hasn't happened. Maybe it's the chapter after that. Maybe I'm wrong. Could be. Yeah, we're leading up to it anyway. So the next couple of chapters are great stuff. But yeah, what a great chapter. A very dinky, slinky, very well put together chapter by Frank Herbert that works on so many levels. Hugely meta, very meta. That's all I'll say. Sound like a millennial there, don't I? But a very important chapter, and one that seriously makes me thinking. We ran with that little bit of Abraxas stuff, which we wanted to attach it to the end of the previous chapter, but it was too much work, so we just thought we'd do that at the end of this week because it was a short chapter. So next one's going to be a meaty one, folks, and we'll have to get cracking at it. And we'll hope to see you next Thursday at 10 p.m. GMT +1 for chapter 19 in our new notebook of God Emperor of Dune by Frank Herbert. In the meantime, have a great week, as Sootpot says. Sootpot, look after yourself. Hope you say hi to all the nurses. Tell them it's good that they're looking after you. And get well soon. And we'll say good night, everybody. Look after yourselves. Be excellent to one another. Stay groovy. And we'll see you next week. All the very best from me. Bye-bye. Sootpot saying, well do. Look after yourself, sir. Take it easy, man. Bye-bye.